if you can join at least one of them, we would love that. We would also love you to tell your friends. This is not something that you need to exclude people from. This is a great way to introduce people to Dining for Women. So we welcome many people. I know this week we have Melinda Silverstein's cousin, I think, so, and someone's sister. So this is a fantastic venue for all of us to see each other and learn about international issues facing women and girls. So first of all, how to unmute and mute yourself. If you go to your picture and there is let me find my picture so I can coach you through this. There's so many of us, there's 45 people. Okay, if you go to the top of your picture, there's two little blue boxes that will light up if you put your mouse over it, and one says mute, and if you click on it, you will be muted. Wendy Fradlin, who is our Director of Communications and Membership, she's waving. She has the ability to mute everybody at once. So she may mute you and you won't be aware of it. So just know that. She and I will also be monitoring the chat. If you don't have your chat box up, go to the bottom of your Zoom menu and put your cursor over your mouse over that, and you'll see next between the share and the record button, you'll see a speaking bubble. Click on that and that should open your group chat. And this is where we will be sharing information, and we would love for everyone to introduce themselves, say where they're from, say hi to people, but we'll also be putting information in there that you may want to see. All right. Okay, I mentioned Wendy. She will also be sharing links with you for you to donate. And now I am going to introduce Linda Baxter, who is going to do our grantee presentation tonight. And can you make her the speaker, spotlight speaker, please, Wendy, by clicking on her photo? And Linda Baxter is a member of our grant selection committee, and she's also a leader and founder of her rural Western Massachusetts chapter 8 years ago. While traveling around Guatemala last year, she visited WING's headquarters in Antigua and spoke with some of the staff about WING's activities and new initiatives. She's also a retired nurse midwife, so she has a particular interest in women's reproductive health projects like WING's. And Linda, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's very late on the East Coast, so we really appreciate you presenting WING's for us. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Beth Ellen. I'm delighted to be able to present it because I really love this project. And when I visited them, I was so impressed, and I really encouraged them to apply. And I was just delighted when they actually were selected for a grant. So to tell you, let me talk a little bit about this project. WINGS in Guatemala, that stands for Women's International Network for Guatemalan Solutions. And the project that we're supporting is a 2-year project. And the title of it is Reproductive Health Geographic Expansion to Guatemala's Western Highlands. So this grant will support an expansion of WINGS, their reproductive health services, to 3 hard-to-reach departments, really remote areas in Guatemala: Huehuetenango, Quetzaltenango, and San Marcos. And these are areas in the Western Highlands of Guatemala. Now, a little bit about Guatemala. It has a large Pacific coast, and it's between El Salvador and Mexico. Slightly smaller than the state of Pennsylvania. Most of the population lives in the southern half of the country, primarily in these mountainous regions, very rural. Guatemala is the most populous country in Central America, and it has the highest fertility rate in Latin America. Also, it has the highest population growth rate in Latin America. So the population is therefore very young. More than half are below 25. And poverty is an increasing problem in Guatemala for everyone. Guatemala also has the highest maternal mortality rate in Central America, and they have very high child malnutrition rates and rates of stunted growth in children. In addition to the general poverty, one of the biggest factors affecting it is related to climate change. Most of the people are subsistence farmers, and as you may know, there's been a lot of problems with drought there. There have been weather changes where it's become very erratic and unpredictable. So they're having huge problems with crop failures and people unable to feed their families, which is then pushing them towards migration to other countries like the US. Now in Guatemala, they also have a very high adolescent pregnancy rate, one of the highest. In 2018, they say that 4,600 girls aged 10 to 14 were pregnant, which was an 8% increase over the year before. And over 100,000 girls aged 15 to 19 were pregnant, which was a 27% increase from the year before. So this is a huge problem. Now, the majority of these pregnancies in the girls 15 to 19 are not planned, they're unintended. Although they do have issues with child marriage there, and so some of them are probably coming from married young girls. It's estimated by some that nearly half of these unintended pregnancies end in unsafe abortion. So needless to say, this is a cause for women dying, this in complications of pregnancy. In fact, in Guatemala, the maternal mortality rate is 73 out of 100,000. And in the US, it's 16 out of 100,000. But because of the disparity between indigenous Guatemalans and others, and non-indigenous, the indigenous women are experiencing nearly a double than the 73, which is the national average. Another issue that's difficult, makes limiting family size difficult in Guatemala, according to the Guttmacher reports, is that many Guatemalan women feel that they must ask their husbands for permission to use contraception. And a lot of husbands do not think they want their wives to do that. Women are, so clearly contraception is a big issue that needs to be addressed in Guatemala. Now, just go back a little bit about this organization. I just want to say that it was founded in 2001 by a woman named Sue Patterson, who was a Peace Corps volunteer in Colombia some years back, and then worked as a foreign service official, retired from that, and then found from some friends of hers that they were asking for help for some women who, each of whom had 8 or more children, and they wanted to get their tubes tied. And they were having great difficulty doing that. So she raised some money for them. She got interested in the issues in Guatemala, and she founded WINGS. What they do is they have a central clinic in Antigua, which is a large colonial city in Guatemala. Then they have several mobile clinics. So they have, they pack up all the supplies for a clinic into a truck, and they go around the country setting up temporary clinics. At these basically birth control clinics, at these clinics, they offer short-term and long-term contraceptive methods. They do a lot of counseling. And they also have a youth leadership program. So then this is a really exciting thing that they're not solely providing direct services, but they're also really educating young people. They have young women and men, 13 to 19, who they train as youth leaders. And then these youth are able to go around to the community, providing accurate information about sexual and reproductive health to their peers. And they can also refer them to the WINGS Center for services as they need it. Now, when they go into a community, they also identify volunteer promoters, and they do some training with these women. They find a community leader who can help them negotiate coming into the community and bringing the issues of contraception to women who may have never discussed it with anyone before. In addition, and a unique thing that WINGS offers is permanent sterilization procedures. They have contracts with the Ministry of Health for their physician to go into local hospitals and be able to offer tubal ligation and vasectomy. And I don't think that Dying for Women's ever had any reproductive health program that was offering permanent sterilization procedures like this. So they're really offering a full spectrum of contraceptive services. In addition to that, they do pap smear screening for cervical cancer, and they use the immediate treatment plan, the visual VIA it's called. Basically, they're putting, they're seeing abnormal spots on the cervix and treating them immediately. So this is really a pretty comprehensive women's health service. The project that we're supporting is directly benefiting 1,100 women each year. So about 2,200 a year are direct beneficiaries. Then of course we think about their children, how they will benefit from their mothers not having many more children. We think about their sisters and their women friends who will benefit from the education that they get and learning about the availability of contraceptive counseling and services. And we all know from all the projects that we've talked about in the past that children raised by mothers who are in control of their reproductive health often grow up having greater access to knowledge about their own bodies and are better able to control their own reproductive health. And of course, with fewer children, hopefully they can provide education and healthcare more readily to the children they do have. The budget for this project is $50,000 spread out over 2 years. And their total budget for that time period is $250,000. So we're not funding their entire project, but a large portion of it. And our money is going to pay for a lot of travel costs. When they are sending this new mobile van to new communities, oftentimes it could be a 12-hour drive to get to these places. So the van they'll park themselves in one community for the whole week, and the staff will take the van to different communities in that area. So meals, hotels, gasoline for the van, etc. We're also spending money on a lot of clinic supplies that they need that need to be replaced. We're also funding some of the costs of their new regional headquarters in Quetzaltenango. So the grant selection committee always, of course, looks at the budget very carefully, and we felt like this was really well done and appropriate. Another thing that we like to look at when we're selecting grantees is evidence of past success. And one of the things that I find particularly positive about WINGS is the number of other NGOs around Guatemala who have asked to partner with WINGS. For instance, Maya, the formerly Starfish, has asked WINGS to come in and provide sexual and reproductive health education to all their high school students. And there are several other of our former grantees who also have done the same. So that WINGS is really looking like a central figure in providing these kinds of services in Guatemala. Over the almost 20 years they've been serving Guatemala, they now have provided seen almost 300,000 clients. And they estimate over 250,000 unintended pregnancies that have been prevented with their services. Now, one of the things that particularly surprised me when I visited their headquarters in Antigua and we were talking to the director of development, and they were explaining to us the intensity of cultural opposition to the use of family planning in Guatemala. And WINGS is very careful to enter new communities slowly and carefully, so as to avoid upsetting people. But they actually seem to be fearful of violence if they weren't careful about how they came into new communities. And that did surprise me quite a bit that it was so strong. Now, what I really like about this project, I love the idea of the mobile clinics and really bringing services to where the women are. Because these women would never be able to get to Antigua to access services if they even knew that they were available. The youth peer education program, I think, is fantastic. I think that's a way they are really going to be able to change the mindset of people in the country. They were thrilled when we were there that they had just signed the memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Health, so they're able to provide more services in the hospitals. And the other thing that I love about this project is their real human rights-based focus. They really talked at length about how they listen to each patient. They allow them to take the lead in making decisions about their own contraceptive needs. And they pointed out that this is particularly meaningful for women who are not accustomed to making decisions about their own bodies or their own lives, and that always have to ask a man or wait for a man to make the decisions. So I think that not only are they providing direct services, they're really giving something much more to these women in giving them an opportunity to take control of their own reproductive health. So I think this is a fabulous program, and I'm delighted that we're able to support them. I just want to say that there was a question before, and I looked it up. Sadly, they have had to close their services as of the 10th of March because of coronavirus concerns. So Wendy Beth Ellen, that's my thoughts about WINGS.
That's great. Well, we're going to watch the video now. Can everyone see the WINGS, the start of the video on their screens right now? Nod your heads if you can. All right, awesome. Yeah. Sorry, you were all muted. All right, here we go.
Can't really hear it.
Okay, I'm going to just pause it because I understand that you're not hearing it well. So let me try this again. And I'm going to bring it back. I think this will work better now. There was one button that didn't get clicked.
El otro objetivo de la clínica móvil es también llevar orientación para que tomen una buena decisión en la elección de su método. La mayoría de las mujeres desean darle lo mejor a sus familias, pero el problema más común que vemos son los mitos y la desinformación que tienen las mujeres en relación a los métodos.
Se le va a colocar anestesia, con un aparatito se le van a colocar los implantes así. Lo único es que como el implante está negativa, vuelve a hacérselo en 3 años, ¿verdad? Y flujo con mal olor.
Los problemas más comunes creo que ha sido la cantidad de hijos. Eso ha sido un problema que afecta también la salud de ellas y la economía, y al brindarles un método de planificación familiar ellas pueden decidir, ellas pueden darle una mejor calidad de vida y principalmente en sus hijos, que es en quien ellas más piensan.
Quieren, sus esposos pues quieren que tengan sus hijos, bastantes. Entonces el hombre aquí es muy machista, la religión también, pero no es así, porque ya el hombre ya no tiene trabajo, ya no tiene cómo mantener a los niños. Pero ahorita ya la mujer como que ya despertó. Ahorita la mujer ya se defiende, aunque no quieran, ellos lo hacen, se ponen su implante o planifican, ya no quieren más hijos.
Una mujer tenía 20 hijos y nunca había hecho su examen y nunca había utilizado tampoco un método de planificación familiar, y el llevar este servicio tan lejos a personas que nunca han tenido este acceso, creo que marca la vida de nosotros a querer seguir haciéndolo.
All right, we're going to pause it right there before we go on to the rest of the video on the sustained grantee.
Everybody, I just want to say a couple things about our sustained grantees. some Dining for Women members who have been around for a long time may not even be familiar with our sustained grants, because it's just been in the last year that we've been highlighting the videos on our monthly videos. And our sustained grants are sort of our gems, because they have been selected as organizations that have done tremendous work, and many of which are truly making systemic change. And so we really encourage you, when you have your own chapter meetings, whether they're virtual or eventually in person, to watch the sustained videos and read about them, because we do write about them in our materials. And these videos are great because they will reflect back to their original grant and how they're building on it now. So now I'll let you, Linda, talk about African people and wildlife.
Were there any
First,
questions?
we were going to open it up for questions. Bethel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So there was, yeah, there was one question in the chat. Chris, if I can read your question, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and just ask it yourself, that would be great.
Hi, Linda, it's Chris here.
Hi.
I wondered if you could give a little more detail on, I wondered about the challenges that the youth leaders face when they go to these, I don't know, the villages or the groups that they talk to, they introduce themselves. What kinds of pushback do they get? Is it from men in particular, or do they get pushback from the church? What kind of organized religion effect is there in these remote villages?
Well, I'm not sure that the youth, how much of the youth leadership are going into the remote villages. I have the impression that they're more in the urban areas, and that it's mostly the basic staff that's going to the villages after they've identified the community, women who are community leaders, who are going to be the volunteers for that community. I think they get, I'm not sure exactly who they get pushback from, but I think it's certainly the men. I imagine some of the women. It's a new concept in this area. Women, many of them apparently really know very little about the availability of contraception, other than maybe they might know about condoms. Maybe they know about birth control pills. But many of them say they have to hide it from their partners. So that's why the long-acting methods are certainly good, the IUDs and the implants, because they're not visible to the partners.
Yeah, I get the sense from the video that they are they mentioned being able to stand up for themselves now. It's like they've had it.
Yeah, but I think some are standing up quietly and some are standing up maybe more vocally.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing this to us.
I have another. Thanks, Chris. I have a question from Karen.
Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up. So, do you know how many times on average the mobile unit has to go into a village before the women actually, become clients or there's buy-in?
I can't tell you exact numbers, but I gather that they identify the community volunteer leader who goes around the community and talks to people over some period of time, talks about the idea of contraception, talks about this clinic will come in the future. So they may make a few visits to a community before they actually send in the mobile clinic to actually provide services.
Great, that makes sense.
The community ladies, the volunteer promoters apparently are able to give things like condoms or birth control pills while they're there. They don't need the clinic to come back, for instance, for refills.
That's great.
But they need the van for the longer acting, the more complex methods. So they go, I got the impression like maybe 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Hopefully with this new third mobile van and the new hub in the Western Mountains, they'll be able to get to those communities a little more often.
I'm always struck how gorgeous it is there.
Yes.
So pretty. Oh. Thank you.
I just want to share that we, I know some of you have noticed that we have a former Peace Corps volunteer on the call. Amy is actually new to Dining for Women. She had hoped to attend an in-person meeting, but it got canceled because of the coronavirus. And Amy was in Guatemala for 5 years and was a Peace Corps volunteer, and comments about how things have changed and that this was really a forbidden topic. So Amy, if you want to briefly share, anything about your experience, I know we're always eager to hear from Peace Corps volunteers.
Hey everybody, I'm sparing you the picture of me because my hair is really at a scary sight after all this working from home, so I'm just being kind to you. Yes, I was a volunteer in the mid-90s, and I was tasked with planting trees and digging ditches. It's a very agricultural society there too. And Peace Corps, you have this image of Peace Corps volunteer, the Peace Corps being like full of like hippies and very liberal-minded people, and it definitely is, but it is a government agency, and they were very conservative with a lot of things. And so this particular topic, we were told, just don't even broach it because it's too tricky, and you're gonna, your job is to kind of not really blend in, but become part of your village and get people to work with you. And if you talk about certain subjects, people are going to be very alienated by it. And it's wrapped up in a lot of religion. Some people are Catholic, some people are Mormon, some people are evangelical. And this topic was particularly taboo. So I think it's fantastic that that's kind of lifted now, and women are really becoming empowered to take control of their lives, because I too, just like somebody mentioned, I think on the video, in my village, there was somebody who had 20 children too, 20 children. So, and also the idea of women even knowing about these things, that was suspect to them, because there's this idea that only prostitutes knew about contraceptive, things. So, it was very tricky for women to even bring it up to their husbands too. So I just think this program is great, and it's going to really help people take control of their lives a little bit more, and also just screenings for cervical cancer too. That's really amazing. I think women don't even think about going to a gynecologist on an annual basis too. So it's just going to do so much good. So I was very excited to see that was your chosen grantee.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing that. Go ahead, Bethel.
Well, I'm really excited that before we go on to our sustained grantee, we have Vicki Bush Joseph, who has been on 2 Dining for Women trips, which is one of the things that we do at Dining for Women. We go and we visit grantees, and I was fortunate enough to visit Bhutan with her this summer, with many of you on this call. And also, then she went to Guatemala, and she lives outside of Chicago. She's in the Western Springs chapter of Dining for Women. She's been a member for 2 years, and she read about Dining for Women in Nicholas Kristof's book, which many of you have. She's a retired attorney. She worked a lot in various women's issues, a lot of reproductive issues. But her claim to fame is having helped write and pass the law that provides insurance coverage for infertility treatment. Vicki also just joined the Dining for Women Advocacy Committee, which meets once a month virtually. So if you're new to Dining for Women, that's another aspect of what we do. We advocate for foreign aid for women and girls. And Vicki loves to travel. She's visited over 30 countries, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experience in Guatemala with CCFC, Cloud Forest Conservation.
Community Cloud Forest Conservation.
Community, thank you, I'm so sorry.
No
Community
worries.
Cloud Forest Conservation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth Ellen. I'm thrilled to be here this evening and to be able to talk about this most recent trip. I'm so pleased to see so many of you from our trip to Bhutan last June, and then some of the folks from the Guatemala trip as well. And I've got a couple of pictures up here. I wanted to just add a little bit to, in terms of the context that Linda described for us. Having just been there in Guatemala in January, the area we were in is the Department of Alta Verapaz, which is considered the Appalachia of Guatemala. It's also the Highlands. They actually work in conjunction. Community Cloud Forest Conservation works in conjunction with WINGS. One of the facts that was relayed to us when we were there through one of the young women who's training to be a nurse is that 85% of the women in that region are not using family planning. And the focus on our trip was really education. And so I learned quite a bit about that. Education is in the country is free and compulsory, but on average, children leave school at age 11. Only half of 13 to 18-year-olds go on to secondary school. And of the children who go on to secondary school, it's mostly boys. Most girls in Alta Verapaz, where we were, do not continue past 6th grade. So Community Cloud Forest Conservation was a featured grantee for Dining for Women, just like WINGS is for this month. Community Cloud Forest Conservation is now a sustained grantee. So we were there visiting them. Actually, I'm sorry, Wendy, go back one to the other picture. We were there. No, the one before. Sorry, there we go. The wonders of technology, but the little glitches here and there. So this is the group of young women that we lived alongside for a week. And there are 19 of them, ages 16 to 26, who are continuing. They actually went through a 3-week residential program that CCFC does for girls starting at age 12. And if the girls go through this 3-week residential program, their chances of going on to secondary school, the majority of them do that. In fact, 90% of the girls that participate in the 3-week residential program go on to secondary school. And then these young women are some of those girls who completed the 3-week residential program, continue with their schooling, and now between the ages of 16 and 26 are finishing high school, community college, and university, and training to be teachers, social workers, and nurses. And their plans are to go back to the villages where they came from. So education is one of the huge components to Community Cloud Forest Conservation. They're not doing the teaching, but except for the younger kids in their conservation programs, but then they're supporting these young women, and the sustaining grant is to support these young women as they continue their educations. So go ahead to the next one now, Wendy, say thanks. I wanted to, these two darling young women are wearing their traditional tops, and I happen to be wearing mine tonight. So this is a huipil. It's hand woven in this area of Guatemala. Most of the The indigenous people here are descendants of Maya, and the Maya make up 40% of the population in Guatemala. And their native language is not Spanish. That is something that they learn in school, and typically only if they continue past 6th grade. So a lot of the girls in the villages in this area and where Linda was talking about don't speak Spanish. They speak Quechua or whatever. There are actually 23 indigenous languages in Guatemala. Okay, next, on to the next one, Wendy. Thank you for queuing up the photos. So we got to do so many amazing things because this is Dining for Women, and because we typically need around a dining table in somebody's home. I thought I'd feature some of the food aspects of what we did for the week with these young girls. So when they're not wearing their traditional dress, some of them always wear traditional dress, always, but others will dress down when they're amongst their friends. And so they'll wear other clothes. We were roasting coffee there on top of a wood-fired stove. And you see those little white things on next to the coffee roaster are taro chips. They grow taro. They're teaching these young women how to grow crops and sustain themselves and their families instead of chopping down the cloud forest, preserving the cloud forest and increasing their opportunities for good, healthy food for themselves, for their families. And so taro is one of the big crops there. Okay, Wendy, we can keep going here. On to the next one. So this is some of our Dining for Women group. A couple of you are on tonight. I know Vicky, the other Vicky, there were 2 of us of the 15 people that were on this trip, which was part of what was fabulous about it. 15 Dining for Women people from all over the country. It's so much fun to be together for this week. So we were there with some of the young women preparing the food. And here we're shelling beans. So go on to this next one. And we'll show you the beautiful beans that we shelled. I mean, could those be more beautiful? We ate beans 3 times a day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, along with tortillas, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We ate fabulously. It was wonderful, but it was all, for the most part, crops that were grown on premises, and these young women know how to prepare and cook food. Let's go on to the next one, Wendy. This is Anna. Anna is one of the 19 students who's continuing her education, but she is a baker supreme. We're making bread here in this amazing kitchen in the center at CCFC. And in addition to the bread that we ate every day with homemade jams, at breakfast, Anna also made amazing cinnamon rolls for us that were to die for, and so many other treats. We can go on to the next one, Wendy. And this is some of our group. We had 2 tables, there were so many of us, but we sat every other with these young women. So this was truly an amazing experience. I have traveled quite a bit. The 30 countries is just in the last 5 years since I retired. But this trip blew me away. And part of it was literally sitting side by side with these young women and seeing their journey and where they've come from and where they're going. So a lot of us didn't speak Spanish. A few of us did, but we still communicated. We were literally breaking bread, singing our prayer before we started our meal, and then digging into this amazing food. And let's keep going, Wendy. And so to finish, this is one of my favorite pictures because to me, it shows the resilience of these amazing young women, what they have overcome to get to this point: domestic violence, poverty, walking for hours to get to school. We did a home visit. We divided it into small groups and went to various homes. It was not technical climbing, but it was challenging to get to homes And these girls were doing that on a daily basis to get to and from school. And that was just to get to primary school. Secondary school and beyond is a whole nother challenge for them. Unfortunately, because of the current situation, I did check in with the center and some of the girls who I'm in touch with via WhatsApp. And they relayed to me that the schools are now closed in the country, like they are pretty much around the world. Most of the girls did return to their homes for now. They were living at the center where they act as instructors for the younger kids. And then they attend university and college on the weekends. But because of the situation, they actually stopped public transportation in Guatemala as well. And there's no longer any transportation in and out of the country either. But even within the country, they can't travel right now. So most of the girls elected to go home. They have 6 of the girls remaining at the center for now. But they're hoping and praying that they get back to the center and back to their studies, because they really, really, really want to help the villages where they came from. And I admire them very much.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And your weepeel is so beautiful. I love I haven't seen a lot that are more monochrome like that, and that is really lovely. I'm impressed too, because mine is way too small. I could never wear the one I bought in Guatemala. So next we are going to show the film, or no, Linda's going to talk a little bit about our sustained grantee, Africa People and Wildlife, which was also highlighted at our International Women's Day event on March 8th.
Okay. So African People and Wildlife Fund was a featured grantee in 2016, and they are now a sustained grantee from last year, beginning last year, 3-year grantee until 2021. As you may know, they receive for this $25,000 a year for 3 years. So African People and Wildlife Fund really works with the Maasai community to reduce conflict between people and wildlife, to help protect their communal lands, to help them manage their rangeland for their large cattle herds. As you may know, the Maasai are nomadic people who travel with very large cattle herds. And their big mission is to foster conservation awareness and activities in Tanzania. And they're also working on economic empowerment of the women. One of the reasons for the focus on economic empowerment now is that the Maasai are beginning to lose access to the pastures that they have traditionally utilized. Partly because of prolonged drought that's going on, and also due to the negative impacts of a blanket government policy that encourages the conversion of grazing land into land for farming. So African People and Wildlife Fund felt that they needed to help people in the communities develop new economic opportunities. And in our featured program in 2016, they focused on beekeeping. And we funded a project where they trained a lot of women, groups of women, in how to make hives, how to tend the bees. They worked on packaging and sales, and et cetera. The whole gamut of what you need to run a honey organization, a business. And they had seminars on business practices and mentoring, et cetera. So during that time, they developed over 50 groups of women. Almost 1,000 ladies have been included in the project. And they put up more than 750 beehives. And they look like they're sort of rectangular boxes that they use that are made somewhere else, so they don't have to cut down trees in order to make to build the beehives. And what's really interesting is they hang the beehives from trees in carefully selected areas, and they work to find areas that are critical corridors for wildlife, the lions and their prey, the big cats, they say. Because in Tanzania, one is not allowed to farm the land underneath where beehives are hanging. So in placing their beehives carefully in these areas, they are protecting the habitat of the big cats, as well as working on income generation. What was interesting in looking at their final report to me was that an unexpected outcome they saw was that women were then using their profits from the honey making and the honey sales of the honey really to reinvest in each other's small businesses. And they almost started their own little micro lending group totally on their own.
Great, thank you so much, Linda. We're going to go ahead and watch the video. You are just going to love this project, everyone.
Let me just say one more thing first, if I may. The project now is they're going to build living walls around the corrals where they keep their herds. This is what we're funding, what they're working on now, to save them from killing the lions, and save the herds from the lions, and allow the women to have more time to work on income generating projects. They're also going to have use our money to mentor the women to have conservation internships and scholarships, so that they can really build up girls in the community to be the next generation of conservationists.
All right, thank you, Linda.
So go.
Hello, my name is Dr. Layli Lichtenfeld, and I'm the CEO of African People and Wildlife. In 2016, we were very pleased to become a featured grantee of Dining for Women. Support from Dining for Women helped us to launch our successful Women's Beekeeping Initiative. The empowerment of women and girls is an important part of APW's community-driven approach to conservation. In the Maasai communities where we work, women and girls face a lot of challenges from the predominantly patriarchal structure of the Maasai community. Our Women's Beekeeping Initiative is currently working with 75 women's groups across northern Tanzania. By helping the women to purchase hives, maintain, and harvest their honey, we provide increased access to economic benefits while also ensuring good habitat protection. Anywhere the women hang their hives in the wild bush, people are not allowed to cut the tree that the hives are hanging in, and they're not allowed to cultivate the land in order to propagate the wild flowers. This is a very strong link between economic empowerment of women and environmental protection. And we see, as women and girls are empowered, improved management of natural resources, more girls going to school, better health care going to the families as a result of the women. Now, with a fantastic sustaining grant from Dining for Women, we will be able to expand the Women's Beekeeping Initiative, launch a new Women in Conservation internship for Tanzanian professionals, and also support women involved in our Living Walls program. Living Walls are environmentally friendly, predator-proof corrals that keep livestock safe from lions and lions out of the way of Maasai spears. One woman whose life has changed due to the support of Dining for Women is Helena Mbarnoti. Here is her story.
Mimi naitwa Helena Barnoti, naishi kijiji cha Loibosiret. Ni mmoja wa vikundi vya kina mama wanaonufaika kwa ufugaji wa nyuki, waliowezeshwa na Africa People and Wildlife, sababu tulipata elimu ya ujasiriamali, tukaanzisha mradi wa mizinga, tukapata elimu ya sisi wenyewe kupandisha mizinga na kupakua sisi wenyewe na kuhifadhi mali na kutafutia soko. Na ni mradi mzuri ambao tulifurahia sana kwa sababu inatusaidia katika familia yetu, inatusaidia kuwasomesha watoto kwenda shuleni, na pia wakina mama wengi wamepata elimu. Baada ya mimi kupata elimu, nikuja kuwawezesha kina mama wenzangu nao wakapata elimu. Kwa hivyo sasa hivi tuko vikundi vingi na mradi wetu tumefurahia kwa sababu ni mradi mzuri ambao unahifadhi mazingira. Na pia mazingira yetu ambayo yalikuwa yameharibika, kwa sasa hivi baada ya kupata huu mradi unaohifadhi mazingira, sasa hivi mazingira yetu yameshakuwa mazuri. Tumepata elimu ya kuwezesha wamama wenzangu kupata elimu hiyo, na mpaka sasa tunaendelea na elimu hiyo na inatusaidia. Kwa hiyo tunafurahi sana kwa kumiliki biashara yetu ya ufugaji wa nyuki, na pia mimi nashukuru sana kwa Africa People and Wildlife kwa kutuwezesha mpaka tumefikia sasa hivi tulipo.
On behalf of the entire African People and Wildlife team, I'd like to thank Dining for Women and its membership for its continued support. We look forward to working together over the next few years. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed that video. It is now 8:01 Pacific time. So I want to let everyone know that we will stay on for another half hour to have questions and social time. And we hope that you'll stay, but we just want to say that our formal program is ending, and we hope that you'll stay on and chat with us. Wendy says, if you're interested in advocacy, our new chapter with results has virtual meetings, and we're focusing on funding maternal and child health. So she put the link in the chat. And so first up, I want to ask if you have questions about African People and Wildlife, if you could please put it in the chat. And while you're doing that, for all of our new to Dining for Women people, I just want to say quickly that Dining for Women is the world's largest giving circle focused on international gender equality. We have over 500 chapters across the country that meet on a monthly basis. And it's a vibrant community that travels together, that does advocacy together, and really creates a community among each other for support. And so I also want to emphasize to everyone that to reach out to your chapter members, see if everybody's doing okay. We just want to remember that our community isn't just a community that one night a month that you see them. We want to make sure that we are doing what we can to support you as individuals. And so we're asking those of you who are here to reach out to people maybe you haven't heard from in a while. So I don't see any questions in the chat about African People and Wildlife, but I also want to thank Linda for presenting, and also to Vicki for presenting. It was wonderful to have a little bit about our Guatemala trip in there. And if you have any questions about anything, it's ask me anything or ask anybody anything kind of half hour. So unmute yourself and let's talk.
I'd like to say something about the Africa Project. It really spoke to me because I was very lucky to go to Kenya and Tanzania with my father in 1980. He loved to climb mountains.
Yeah.
And so I got to climb Mount Kenya and Mount Tanzania in the early days of, people doing silly things like that. And then we did get to interact with many of the tribes. And I recently picked up a book in a used bookstore in Boulder that it's at least 30 years old, but it's a beautiful pictorial testament to the culture 30 years ago of the Maasai warriors. And so it was fun to me to see the unchanging as well as the opportunities. In fact, I have a Maasai gourd on my shelf right behind me that I traded for something with a Maasai woman on that trip.
That's wonderful, Megan. We love hearing stories. Like
Another
that.
interesting thing that the organization is doing is advocating for women's rights. In Tanzania, apparently women have not in the past been able to own property or cattle or land. But if they are earning money themselves, for instance, from selling the honey, they can keep that money and spend it as they wish. And the group is advocating for being able to get land rights for the women.
Well, and one of the topics in this book that was, from a few decades ago was the topic of female circumcision. And I don't know if that's still the case, but that is, I think, a major issue for women in the Maasai culture.
Still an issue, I'm sure.
Yes, it still is. Anyone else?
That's Ellen.
Yes.
You're a beekeeper. What was your take on the hoisting the hives up?
I think that's really bold. We get our 2 new boxes of bees on Saturday, and I was thinking about them, and beekeeping is such a wonderful way to connect to nature, but also what happens is beekeepers have quite a community, and you talk about things like what you are watching these bugs do, and so I feel I just love it, and I want to visit so much. I'm so jealous that I'm not on the Tanzania trip that we were planning to take, but someday I will get there and I will meet those ladies. And I want to tell you that often the bees that they are using, or first of all, they're letting bees come in. They're not capturing, they might be capturing hives and putting them into the boxes, but a lot of times, especially if they're in trees, the bees will just go in. And so they're wild bees, and the different hives may have different bees because they're all wild bees. Here in the United States, they're called Italian bees, Apis italis. But in Africa, there are a bunch of different kinds of bees that they're using, and the honey is very, very dark. And they probably mix it together from the various bees. But you can get some I've had it at Whole Foods before, and if you just get a little packet, and because it's expensive, and drizzle it over cheese, it's amazing.
Wow.
Any other beekeepers out there?
I was just going to make a comment. We actually had this for our chapter meeting 2 weeks ago or last week, and the observation at the time was, men are 50% of the pregnancy issue in Guatemala. And they mentioned at the time that some of the men are having vasectomies. And I said, oh, they're taking responsibility for all of these 20 children or whatever they're siring. So I thought that was really fantastic that there was a man on that bus going around with women. I'm sure part of it was protection, whatever, but it was just a really good role model for him to be there.
Good point.
That is a great point, Ellen. And to achieve gender equality, we have to have men involved. And so to model that kind of behavior is really important. Sorry, Donna, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, because Linda had mentioned something that we donated years ago to PINK, which was Prevention International No Cervical Cancer. And Linda mentioned that they were using VIA, which is EVA, whatever, the vinegar inspection with acetate, which is a procedure to look for cervical cancer in women. And I'm thinking of WINGS and how they're connected, or I would imagine that that process was brought to Guatemala from PINK. I think they initiated that process. But these women that are going to these clinics for healthcare and for fertility or, for birth control, so many of them have never had any kind of pap smear or anything. And the fact that they've integrated this into WINGS just really inspires me to think that the connectivity of our past grantees and our present grantees and how that union is really, really going to help women and their health, because it is a huge problem in Central America and it's a simple procedure. So I was happy to hear that that's something that they're implemented and using in Guatemala. So just kudos to the grantee that we're using this month.
The Grant Selection Committee has been receiving a number of different applications from organizations using that visual inspection method in Asia as well as Central America and Africa also. So you may see more of that.
I hope so. I know that the women that started it originally with PINK have subsequently retired, and the organization still exists with a different leader. But I know that they did go to Central America and teach. The goal was to teach healthcare workers how to do the procedure, and then they left. That was their goal, and it's nice to see that it's being implemented. So, and they,
well, later this year, we're going to see another organization doing that.
Wonderful, because it's really important, and so many of these women have never ever had any kind of, aside from birth control. I mean, women's health, the lack of women's health, and how easy this procedure is to prevent cervical cancer. Right. It's unbelievable.
Right. And cervical
cancer
is a killer of women in Africa and Central America.
Yeah.
And in South America, another one of our grantees, DB Peru, did such extraordinary work in the Napo area of the Amazon that they were awarded a huge WHO grant. And that kind of thing happens with many of our grantees. They are able to get this catalytic type of grant from Dining for Women that where they're able to finally showcase what they're capable of, and then they can get the attention of the local governments who then want to partner with them, and it just kind of goes from there. Just quickly, I wanted to share this. Can you see this on my screen?
Yes.
Nicholas Kristof. So for our advocacy chapter, we partner with Results, and on April 4th, they are doing a webinar with Nicholas Kristof. And this is where you can find the live stream. It's just basically on their Facebook page, which is Results Ed Fund. So if you go and like the Results Facebook page and then go there at 1 p.m. on April 4th, you can see Nicholas Kristof, and he may be able to answer some of your questions.
Huh. I'll be there.
Cool. Yeah.
I just wanted to shout out to Donna, who just spoke, my roommate in Guatemala, and Donna is a practicing nurse in Wisconsin, so she knows what she's talking about, and very involved at the leadership level with Dining for Women, and along with Beth Ellen and with Ellen here on the call, we were all together in Bhutan too, but Donna and I are the only ones who were in Bhutan and Guatemala.
Yes, and we were, and just thinking of Dining for Women connectivity, Vicki had mentioned, is anyone thinking about Guatemala? And I personally was thinking that moment, I really want to go, don't want to go, etc. And as soon as I got this message from her, I'm like, yep, I'm going to go. And it was a wonderful, as she said, it was an unbelievable week. And Ellen was on our Bhutan trip too. So I don't know. We're all over the.
Mary Luca.
Yeah, Mary was
Lukács
also,
too.
yeah.
But we're all from all over the country with the united front of wanting to help women globally. And it's just really cool to see everybody. The friendship that I've created with Vicki is fabulous from one trip to another, and just having like minds together in these unique experiences really is special from dining. So
By the
I'm being
way,
with Beth Ellen.
From that Bhutan trip, I took on the challenge to present a public lecture. I put together a PowerPoint and presented it at the local library. It was fair, but it was a nice experience. And I'm sorry, every conversation I have, I brag about dining for women. And people, I really do. Sometimes something comes up and we start talking, and yeah, I'm a natural networker. So
when before this chapter meeting tonight, I was on another Zoom with our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and one woman who is chapter leader here in Greenville, she said, I am just proud to be a woman when I host my chapter meeting. And I just thought that was the greatest way to describe a Dining for Women experience. So maybe not the greatest, but one of the great ways, because there are so many great ways.
It's really nice to meet other like-minded women and all over the country. It's amazing.
Very much so.
Well, and Susan's heard me say before, I really like, Boulder can seem like a somewhat self-absorbed place. And I love having an evening every month that's not about us. It's about what's happening in the world for these women and girls and how we can be a positive force for the change.
Mm-hmm. One advantage of doing the virtual meetings, as much as it's a disadvantage not to be able to meet our own chapters, but to do this. So as part of our Brave New World, after we're past this phase, as a suggestion, Beth Ellen and Wendy, I think it would be great to do these maybe once a quarter, once every 6 months, something like that, because it is fabulous to connect with people from all over the country and not have to go outside of our country on a DFW trip to do that. I had actually started signing up for the India trip in January 2021 and would still very, very, very much like to do that. But obviously we have to wait and see how everything settles down. But sign me up for any trip.
Oh, I feel too.
We had, I don't know if you saw on our Facebook page about a month ago or maybe 2 months ago, Wendy shared this cartoonist in India, not cartoonist, she's a graphic novelist who was doing basically comic books for women's rights issues. Right. And I contacted her and said, oh, I'd love to interview you. So sometime in the next couple months, I'm going to try to do one of these where we can talk to this woman who's doing this incredible work through comic books for girls in India. So those are the kinds of things I think, Vicki, you're right, that kind of thing would be a perfect, even with the Dining for Women of the past, would be great, even when people are meeting in their homes, to bring us all together for something unique like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm the perennial optimist, and we would not be having this if it weren't for really bad times, because through bad times, there's always a silver lining. And the silver lining is we've learned to be more creative. We learn to use the tools that we have. We are learning to reconnect with people virtually. And so if you get discouraged, just think about what new opportunity lies ahead.
That's right. If you get discouraged, come hang out with us on Thursday nights.
This was my
Definitely
first really
learning
rough
new
day,
technology.
the isolation, and this has turned it around. Thank you.
Mhm.
Very
I-
much so.
Yeah.
No Zoom existed before last week.
Well, I'm curious. I know there's just maybe 17 people left. How many people had been on, or that this is your first time on Zoom? I mean, you can just raise your hand if it's your first time.
I recently retired and I used it a lot in my work. So,
Oh, okay. So,
and 2 days ago with my family for the first time on a personal.
uh-huh.
I
Okay,
never
so
used
some
it
people
until
are-
dining, so you guys
Yeah.
introduced me to Zoom, so it's really cool. And I think Terry Abrams said her broker said invest in Zoom, and that was about 2 weeks ago. I'm like, darn it. It's like that's a new catchphrase is Zoom because the kids are using it, everybody's using it. So
Yeah, I know that tonight my husband's family was all getting together to open bottles of wine. So
My daughter
together from Alaska to Hawaii to Florida. Yeah, it was great.
My daughter's teaching first graders in Chile over Zoom.
Oh my goodness.
Challenging.
Is she here or in Chile?
She's in Chile. It's a Waldorf school, but they've shut down for the same reasons of exposure.
Oh, wow. That's hard.
To transform her whole curriculum.
Well, yeah, because Waldorf's like anti-computer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's the behavioral issues that are hard to manage on Zoom, she tells me.
Yeah.
My mom's on Skype. She's 94, and I'm able to technologically keep in touch with her every single day. I can see her, I can hear her, I know she's doing all right, and I cannot say how wonderful that is.
That is great. That is.
We're lucky. We're lucky we're living in this technological age.
Exactly.
Well, I am going to start to wrap this up unless anyone has any more questions about dining for women or for each other.
You East Coasters are troopers. That's very, very late for you guys. So good job.
Tired.
That's okay. I wanted to see all you West Coasters, so.
And Midwesterners, we're here.
And Midwesterners, yeah.
And I just want to say personally, like for me to see Ellen right now is awesome, and Vicky, and the women that I got to travel with, and to see one of my chapter leaders is really cool too. Hi, Margie. So I sent out a bunch of messages, and I saw a bunch of people reply. So I think this is awesome, and I'm really excited to see this happening. And I have to mimic what Vicky said. I think it's cool, and out of funny, crazy situations, I think a new thing has been created for dining, and it would be cool to see this continue like quarterly after the world returns to what our new normal will be.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you, everyone. Just one more reminder, if you are not signed up for recurring donation, it's even more important now than it has ever been. Women and girls consistently will see the brunt of situations like this that are happening worldwide. Every country that we're in is being affected. And so thank you so much for your support. Thank you for being this community, and please reach out to to people who weren't here and just to check in with them, because we want to know that everybody's okay. I want to tell you that I have not heard of any Dining for Women member with coronavirus yet.
Hope.
Yeah, that doesn't mean we don't have one, but I haven't heard of any. So let's just keep checking in on each other.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
good night. Good job, everybody.
Bye, Vic.
Bye.